Hello everyone, I am Nancy Kageyama from Missouri State University in the United States. This presentation is for International Conference on Teaching, Education, and Learning hosted in Tokyo. The title of my study is The Impact of Business Game Features on Students' Learning and Critical Thinking. I have two co-authors, Dr. Kobos and Dr. Barreda. Both of them are from Missouri State University as well. Below is the outline of my presentation. First, I will start with the introduction to provide some background of the study. And I will provide literature review and theoretical framework. Also, I will talk about the methodology applied in the study and the data analysis results. Finally, I will talk about the discussion and implications of the study. Introduction. So for myself, I'm in hospitality business. So the simulation I'm using is in the business field. So I would like to provide a definition for business computer simulation. So it is a model or software program that requires participants to make business decisions. So the simulation can be web-based. For example, I'm using Harvard simulations. It's a web-based simulation. So the student will log into the website to have access to the simulation. On the other hand, there can be software-based. So student will download the software to have access to the simulation. And the key here is that the participant, the student, can make decisions in the simulation, and they can know the results of these decisions and make some changes if needed. From educators' perspective, educators increasingly use virtual learning environments as a way to communicate effectively with students. So, for example, lectures are very common in learning delivery mode, but simulation can offer another mode for student learning. Also, it can provide more technology in the class experience. In addition, students, they don't need to come to the classroom in order to use the simulation. They can use the simulation in the place of their choice anytime they want. So it's very flexible, especially for the current situation with the COVID-19. It can provide additional channels for students to learn and interact with the material. So from student perspective, for students who utilize e-learning tools such as simulation to supplement their classroom-based studies, they can experience increased academic performance. For students, the use of computer simulation provides an e-learning medium for them to engage with the materials actively, because in simulations, they need to study the scenario of the simulation, and they need to apply the knowledge they learn and make any adjustment based on the results they have obtained. In this way, simulation also cultivates their critical thinking skills. And the key is that everything is in a risk-free environment. So, for example, they can be the CEO of a company, and they make all the decisions in all the areas, in finance area, in marketing area, and they will have the results based on the decisions they made, and they can restart the scenarios if it didn't go well. So everything is risk-free, and if they can experience this in the classroom before they enter to the company, they can learn those knowledge in a risk-free environment, and it will help them to understand the real world. So additionally, the simulation can provide a bridge between theory and practice. So in the simulation, basically they will need to apply the knowledge they learned, so they will bridge between theory and practice. And in the current study, we are investigating the relationship among the features of simulation, structure, and environment, and how those features affect students' perceived learning and how perceived learning affect their critical thinking abilities. So the results of the study will help us to understand the importance of those features and how those features affect student learning and critical thinking ability. In this slide, you can see an example of the decision tab in the simulation. So in this simulation, they will have a variety of tabs. So some tabs will be for the information. So the information about the company, the financial information, different data in the company. And at the end, they will come to this decision tab to make the decision. So for example, they need to decide the price for the product, and for customers, there are different segments. So they will need to decide the discount for each segment, and also they will need to decide how much emphasis they want to put in terms of the sales force for each segment. So for example, I use this simulation for marketing. So in marketing, segmentation is a critical concept. So they will learn about the concept through applying the concept in this simulation. And also the budget, they need to decide how much money they want to distribute in different areas. So they will put all the numbers in, and then they will click decide. And after they click the decide, they will see the results from this quarter. So they will go through different quarters in the simulation. There are some literature about the use of simulation in teaching and learning. So as I discussed in introduction, so it can be a successful tool for educators to teach. Also for students, it can be a great learning tool as well. And for students, it will help them to apply upper division business topics. So sometimes we talk about the concept, but students might understand the definition of the concept, but once the simulation requires them to apply the concept, sometimes they have some challenges to connect the application and the definition or the knowledge they learned. So in a simulation, it will challenge them to apply the concept they already learned. And in the literature, it suggests that actually simulation will help to advance student levels of critical thinking, problem solving, and self-efficacy. However, there are few studies that have presented empirical results of the significance of simulations. So the current study proposes a theory-based model to explain the advantage and the benefit of using student simulations in terms of student outcomes. Here is the theoretical framework of the study. It starts with simulation features, including simulation structure and simulation involvement. Simulation structure will be more about if the simulation provides clear tasks or goals for students to follow, and if the simulation provides sufficient information for the students. And the simulation environment will be more about if the simulation can keep students engaged or is very interesting, so students want to continue with the simulation. So how those features influence student perceived learning and how student perceived learning affect their critical thinking ability. Here is the methodology applied to test the relationship proposed. So the target sample will be the hospitality students over 18 years old. with a business simulation experience in the classroom. They are screened and invited to participate in online survey, and all the skills are adapted from the relevant literature. And the items were measured with 7-point Likert scale, ranging from strongly disagree 1 to strongly agree 7. And the data analysis was performed in 2 steps. The first one is confirmatory factor analysis, CFA, and the second step is structural equation modeling. And the analysis of the data reveals satisfactory overall fit of the CFA model and the final SEM model. Looking into the results of the structural model, so for the relationship proposed, all the relationships are significant. So the simulation structure affects learning and environment. Simulation environment affects student learning, and student learning affects their critical thinking abilities. So for structure and environment, you can see the coefficient is higher for structure. So we can suggest that structure has more effect on the student learning than the simulation involvement. Based on the last slide, in discussion, we can say that overall, the simulation structure and environment would affect students' perceived learning. And the student perceived learning would affect student critical thinking ability positively. So this means that simulations with better structure, for example, if they provide clear goals or provide sufficient information for students, it will help students to learn better, and in turn, students will develop a higher level of critical thinking ability. So with simulations with better structure and environment will help students learn better, and in turn, develop students' critical thinking ability. So for discussions, also we can provide some implications for educators and simulation developers. So from the last few slides, we know simulation structure and environment can affect students' perceived learning positively. However, simulation structure was a more critical dimension than environment for student perceived learning. So in terms of the structure, educators can choose simulations with easy rules to follow and simulations that present clear goals and tasks to help students to learn better from the simulation. Also, the simulation will need to have all the information necessary for the student, so student can feel confident to play in the simulation. And the simulation need to provide support to help the student accomplish the task as well. In terms of the environment, the simulation will need to engage students deeply in the playing process and keep students interested throughout the playing process. So the content of the simulation need to be interesting enough to keep students engaged, and they will be interested in playing the simulation continuously. So environment is another key component as well. So based on those results, the educators can choose simulation with good support, good structure, and high level of involvement. Because in the marketplace, there are a variety of simulations. So the insights from this study would help the educators to know how to choose appropriate simulations to help students learn. And also for simulation developers, it will help them to know what features they need to pay attention to when they design the simulations, so they can help students to learn to like the simulation. Thank you for your attention in the presentation.